Good morning or good afternoon. Welcome to the Association for Contract Packagers and Manufacturers webinar entitled Hiring Robot Workers for Your Packaging Process with Zero Capital Investment. I have to tell you, if I read that anywhere else, I would assume it was clickbait. But today our speaker has a very compelling business and technology solution that I think you will find interesting because he addresses that question head on, and I'm really looking forward to hearing his presentation. My name is Carl Melville, and on behalf of the Contract Packaging Association, I will be your moderator today. Ron Puvak, the Executive Director of the CPA, is on assignment. It looks like we have a few more people wandering in, but we're going to get started here. The thing I'd like to tell you about today's session is I have yet to meet, I meet a lot of co-mans, and I don't know of anyone, and most of this audience, by the way, appears to be co-mans, isn't grappling with not just people keep getting more expensive, but we can't find people, and everybody's trying the same 10 things, and we're involved in a lot of that in what we do, and it's a problem. And this is an incredibly cool way of coming at that. We all know that robotics is the bridge to the future, but it's also been a very expensive toll bridge, and I think you're going to like what you hear today. So what I'd like to do now is begin a little 1-minute commercial on the CPA. And if we can advance that slide, terrific. So the CPA now, this is actually our 30th year with all this COVID stuff. We should have planned a better birthday party, but the CPA has been around 30 years. They are by far the largest association of its type serving our industry. We're committed to improving and furthering the value proposition of the contract packaging and contract manufacturing industry for our members and for their branded food customers. There's a lot of things the CPA does, and we could have a whole separate section on that, but I see a lot of folks on the call are involved with the CPA, so I'm going to move through this, but I would like to remind you that education is a very important part of that, and this is just one example of that ongoing education and the value that you get from CPA membership. If you would like more information on the CPA and joining, please visit contractpackaging.org. So that's our CPA piece. I have a couple of housekeeping items. Everyone will be on mute, including myself, for the entire presentation. At the end of today's session, you'll be given a very brief survey. Please, please, please take a minute, fill it out. It helps us make these sessions better. We're also recording this, so within 24 hours, you'll receive a link which you can share with a colleague, re-listen, or whatever. And I think this is going to be a good, well-listened session. There will also be a Q&A session at the end. Our presenter has left time for that. So if you look on your screen, you'll see a Q&A box and a comment box. Please use the Q&A box, and we will curate and triage those and have as many of them as answered as possible by our speaker. So with that, let's get started. It's my pleasure to introduce our speaker. And he's going to change the slide here in just a moment. Misa Ilkhechi, and I sure hope I got his name right, is co-founder and VP of sales for Formic. Formic is a full-service, one-stop automation shop. And prior to launching Formic with Samad Farid back in 2020, Misa held various positions, including Universal Robotics, Dunker Moten, MW Industries, Robert Bosch, John Deere, and several other places. Hey, there he is. He has in that slide. Should have had him bring that up. He also holds a BA from in mechanical engineering from University of Illinois, Chicago. So with that, Misa, we're looking forward to your presentation.
Thank you very much, Carl. I really appreciate the warm introduction, and thank you so much, CPA, for providing us an opportunity to talk to their members. Hopefully, by the end of today's presentation, you'll get familiar with a new concept, and then how potentially that new concept could help a lot of the manufacturers, especially in the packaging space, with the labor shortage challenges that they have. So like Carl mentioned, my name is Misa Ilkhechi. I'm a co-founder, VP of sales at Formic. Formic is a startup, young company. We started in 2020, but prior to starting Formic, the good majority of our organization have worked in robotics and manufacturing and cut our teeth on actually solving real manufacturing problems. We joined CPA in 2022, earlier this year in July, and main reason because good majority of our customers are already members of Contract Packaging Association, so we really wanted to amplify the message and how we can help the members that are involved in CPA. So I think Carl alluded to it a little bit. I think some of these stats are very familiar to most of you who are on this call. There is about 1 million open jobs in manufacturing today. 78% of manufacturers are concerned about the aging workforce. There's about 10,000 baby boomers that retire, you know, every week, and you know that doesn't necessarily help with the labor shortage. Then there's a massive inflation going on due to various supply chain issues and so on, and at the same time the cost of labor is increasing at a very fast rate. As a matter of fact, the average hourly wage fully loaded for most of the manufacturers in the United States is hovering about $50,000 a year, or about $25 an hour. So, but you can't help but notice that still 90% of manufacturers don't have any robotics automation at their facilities. So it makes you wonder, like, why is that the case, right? The automation is very capable. Robots are very capable of performing a lot of different tasks, but yet 90% of manufacturers, especially in the small, medium-sized sector, are not taking advantage of this amazing technology. So I think there's a couple of reasons that I think a lot of you folks at the call could attest to. Some would consider automation fairly expensive. Some might have had bad experience from equipment that didn't necessarily perform the way that they expected. And there is a huge shortage not only on the experience, on the manual labor side, but also the experienced people who could maintain complex machinery at the factory floors. So I wanted to share a quote from one of our customers. David Gray is also a member of Contract Packaging Association, and I'm going to read it word by word. But he said, when you're thinking about investing in a robotic system, you're typically looking for 5 years out for a true ROI. I don't think any CPG brands are interested in doing 5-year contract with co-packers. They feel like there's too much risk to locking it in. So that disables manufacturers and contract packagers to actually go and invest in automation because they don't have these long-term contracts. So traditionally, that kind of brings us to, how manufacturing and robotics industry, kind of work together in the past. Like traditionally, when you wanted to get a piece of automation to do a certain task on your floor, you would go to an integrator, or you go to a robot manufacturer, and then you ask, hey, I'm looking to, load 60,000 cases on a pallet on a monthly basis, right? I want an equipment that does that. You will get a price tag with that equipment. You either could purchase it outright. You typically pay milestone payments, 40% down, 30% after the drawing and engineering is done, 20% on delivery, and 20% after it's start working at your facility. But that model doesn't necessarily work because it has a lot of upfront investment and risk for the manufacturers who are being involved and wanting to buy this automation. That's number one. And then there's always unpredictable expenses that always come up, in regards to maintenance and servicing of that equipment. And what if the system doesn't necessarily perform the way you expected? You've already purchased the equipment, you've already paid for the system. Now it doesn't work. You might have a $150,000 boat anchor sitting at your facility. So a lot of these reasons kind of prohibits manufacturers to really take on that risk. And in this scenario, most of the time, 90% of the time, the risk lies with whoever is purchasing that machine. But what we thought is that there's going to be an alternative way to takes away that risk and expertise required to acquire automation away from the manufacturer, and they just get the outcome that they're looking for. So in this model, where some of you might be familiar with it, it's called Robotics-as-a-Service. You would come back to a Robotics-as-a-Service provider and say, I want a task to be done, and I'm willing to pay $15 an hour for that task to be completed. Right? That hourly rate is really dependent on the complexity of the machine, but that's a good average that we're seeing in typical process with some of our customers. So what Robotics-as-a-Service does, it takes away the upfront investment. You don't necessarily need to spend any money upfront. You only pay for the ongoing usage of that machine, and you're going to get guaranteed performance from the RaaS provider, meaning that if the equipment hits your floor and it's not performing, you're not necessarily paying anything till that system is actually running at your facility. The Robotics-as-a-Service provider takes on all the risk and also takes care of all the ongoing service and maintenance and all the repurposing and reprogramming that machine in case your needs change during the relationship that you have with a provider. So what RaaS really helps you do, it lets you kind of buy the performance out of the machine, not the machine itself. It lets you repurpose the existing labor that you have. A lot of manufacturers have really good employees that they want to keep. With introduction of robotics and automation, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get rid of their labor. You're just going to assign them to more meaningful tasks and more high value tasks. So the good employees you have, you keep them, but they're not necessarily stacking boxes or putting stuff in a box. And it lets you attract new talent because you're investing in new technology. So people are not necessarily interested in doing dull, dirty, and dangerous jobs. But when you are introducing technology, you're asking them to do something more meaningful. Therefore, you can attract new talent. But the more more and more you adopt the new technologies. So, just wanted to kind of compare, what robotics as a service compares to actual labor. There's unlimited robots. You could get as many robots as you need at your facility. There is no upfront cost with acquiring robot as a service, but every time that you're looking to hire somebody, there's hiring fees, payroll, processes, training that goes into actually onboarding that person. With robotics as a service, that doesn't exist. The hourly rate are typically that we see is anywhere from $8 to $25 an hour, depending on what you are, how many hours you use the system, and how complex the task is that being automated. But the labor cost is $15 to $30 an hour, and typically I'll be seeing a big increase in that as well. Robots don't call sick, so there is very minimum downtime. There is no injury, there's no sick leave or anything like that. And there's also no turnover, right? Like robots are not going to quit and walk away from their job, at any point. They're going to continue to do the work as long as there's work available to them. And robots obviously are not, they don't get injured. They might need service and maintenance, but we see with especially some tasks that require a good amount of physical work, you always have injuries that are caused when a person is stacking pallets, especially when they're high, for example. And robots could also be repurposed and reprogrammed, just like labor. Labor is very flexible. You could have them stack one box one day, next day it could be stacking a different box. Same applies to robots. Robots could be reprogrammed and repurposed to do different types of tasks at your facility. So, one might wonder what kind of tasks could a robot do. And for those of you who are not familiar, I'm going to give you some examples on types of projects that can be automated in a packaging space, specifically for today's call's purpose. And there's a lot more tasks that robots could do, but I don't think it would apply to a lot of the people who are on this call today. So the first most obvious one is case forming or case erecting. You have a traditional case erecting machines where they're not very flexible. They could only do maybe a couple of different sizes. But then you have robotic case forming that is a lot more flexible, and it could direct any kind of box at any shape or size. So depending on what your needs are and how many different boxes you have, you could potentially take advantage of one of these technologies. Then there is picking and packing or case packing, depending on how what you like to call it. But that's just generally the task of robots picking up items and putting it in the box after case former kind of presents the case to it, right? And there's different ways that you accomplish the same task. I'm showing two of the most common ones, which is high-speed pick and pack with Delta robots, or case packing with 6-axis robots. There's other alternatives or machines that could do case packing. That doesn't necessarily have a 6-axis or a Delta arm. It could be a gantry system, but nevertheless, the task is packing a box, and there's various ways depending on what it is that you're packing, how big your box is, and what the speed that you require out of the system. That solution could change. Then there is taping and labeling. A lot of this is already automated to a certain extent, a lot of manufacturers, but in some scenarios that it's not, there's also something that you could take advantage of through a robotics as a service solution. And one of the most common types of applications that we see is end-of-line palletizing. Now, again, there are different flavors of palletizing robots depending on how heavy your boxes are, how much footprint you have available, and what the rate that you require out of that machine. You could have different types of solution. You could have a collaborative robot palletizer that you see on the right, which doesn't take any more footprint than an operator, or you will have what you see on the left, is a big palletizing robot that's on a rail that's tending multiple lines, and the range that's something in between. Now, these machines could be adjusted depending on how much footprint you have available, how much payload that your robot needs to handle, how heavy the boxes are and the rates. But it will be somewhere in between an end-of-line collaborative palletizer or a big robot on a 7th axis. So again, options in between are limitless. Then after the palletizing, we see pallet dispensers and pallet conveyors and shrink wrappers. This is another area that automation and robotics could help. Oftentimes, our customers, would require some sort of shrink wrapping at the end of their palletizing cell. So this is another area that I see a lot of manufacturers could take advantage of automation. And then finally is forklift replacement, right? There's again various ways that you could accomplish this. What you see on the left is a mobile industrial robot, which you need to have specific stations for it so that robot could pick those parts up, or you could have a traditional forklift, automated forklift, where it doesn't necessarily need a ton of different customization to your existing floors, and it could pick the pallets normally exactly like a forklift driver. So, I mentioned, robotics as a service. We didn't necessarily invent this term, right? There's a lot of different companies that offer robot as a service, and I'm showing some examples of these types of companies. They oftentimes focus on a very specific kind of task, right? They're not a one-stop shop for everything. They might focus on mobile robots. They might focus on case packing. They might focus on welding. They have a very specific niche that they focus on. But for MIC, we kind of addressed a wide variety of types of automation, and they could provide any sorts of automation by the hour to our end users. Wanted to share some examples of some of our customers and share some numbers on what their systems kind of cost, so you kind of get an idea. This is a co-packer in Illinois. This application is a palletizing application. This is a collaborative palletizer. We are saving the customers about $35,000 a year on their current labor costs. The system is running about 1.5 shifts per day. So it's a mobile palletizing system where the whole pallet, the whole robot could be moved from line to line. Again, there are co-packers, so depending on what they're running that day, the system could be moved around. It doesn't take a ton of footprint, and space was a huge constraint for this specific customer. So and then the rates and the payload of the boxes they were carrying were low enough that a collaborative palletizer would be able to solve their solution. The hourly rate for this robot worker is about $12 an hour. Here's another example. This is a case packing application or pick and pack, and this is actually a flexible. This is the same machine that you see on the lower and the higher, on the above and below picture. It could do vertical or horizontal case packing. This machine specifically is replacing 2 operators. And the hourly rate for this system is $30 an hour. And the customer, as a result of acquiring this machine on their floor, is saving about $75,000 on their labor costs. So, again, robotics as a service is not always the right choice for end users. So I wanted to kind of share some examples of when it makes sense for you to purchase the automation outright, just the traditional way, and when it makes sense for you to actually opt into a robotics as a service solution, or RaaS. So if you have a high capital budget for unlimited systems, meaning if you have enough money set aside for automation, and you have very predictable and static requirements, meaning that you have a long-term contract with an end user and you don't with one of your customers, therefore you don't necessarily anticipate the system requirement changing much, and you have a lot of in-house expertise and to kind of maintain, service, and program these robots and manage them, then it probably makes sense for you to purchase the automation. That is a small percentage of the companies, but you could expect anywhere from 3 to 10 year period payback period if you decide to opt in to purchase the automation and you have all these 3 boxes checked. On the other hand, there are areas that sometimes RaaS makes a lot more sense, which is, I would say, bulk majority of the manufacturers. If you have more OPEX available to you than CapEx, if you don't have a ton of money set aside or access to capital deploy automation, it makes sense to utilize RaaS. If you anticipate that your need for the type of product that you're going to be packaging is going to change, 1, 2, 3, 4 years down the road, it probably makes more sense for you to opt into RaaS. If you have a need for tens of or 20 or 30 systems, if you need to be able to automate as many of your lines as you want, it probably makes sense for you to do RaaS, because the capex is typically not unlimited. So you could opt in and automate all your tasks at the same time, because it doesn't require you any upfront investment. And again, last but not least, is if a lot of the manufacturers that we deal with, they don't necessarily have in-house expertise and technicians and maintenance people that are familiar with this robotic technologies. Therefore, it probably makes sense to opt into Robotics-as-a-Service, given that all the ongoing service and maintenance and spare parts are included in that, rather than purchasing your own automation. When it comes to return on investment, it's immediate, right? No money up front. You only pay an hourly rate when the systems actually start running at your facility. And at that, the hourly rate is significantly, we see 40% less than what you pay for your labor on an hourly basis. So, the moment that robots start working is when you actually start making money right away. You don't have to have a long payback period. So, to just summarize what the process looks like, what we normally do, we do introductory, whether it be a Zoom call or in-person site evaluation. So we'll come to facilities, we identify areas that automation could be applied. We gather some requirements. If you're looking at a case packing application, what are the different types of things that we need to pack? What are the sizes, payloads, rates? What are the box sizes? Or same goes to palletizers. What kind of boxes that we need to handle? What are your pallet patterns? And all this stuff needs to go into consideration. And after we have all that information from our customers, then we typically present them a proposal that kind of says, hey, this machine will cost you X, Y, Z, depending on what type of machine that we have. Then if that hourly rate that is in the proposal is something that it makes financial and economical sense for the end user, then you'll sign a contract with us, and then we'll go ahead and start building the machine. And up to this point, you haven't really committed anything financially. And after we built the machine, the process could take anywhere from 6 weeks all the way up to 30 weeks, depending on the complexity of your machine. Then we install the machine on your floor, and we'll do a factory acceptance test and a site acceptance test, which is, hey, is this machine doing exactly everything that you needed? And the moment that you sign off, that's when you start paying that hourly rate or a subscription fee, if you will. And post-deployment, all the ongoing service and maintenance is included. So sometimes there is periodic, monthly, quarterly visits required to come in and change out specific components on the machine, or grease the joints if the robot requires that, change the valves, change the cups. All that is on us. So we continue to maintain and monitor the systems. More importantly, on every device there is a communication device that kind of monitors the robot, for usage. Also, if there's any specific maintenance requirements, that might cause the robot to go down, we'll kind of know that ahead of time, so we could get ahead of it before it happens. And throughout the contract, there is an uptime guarantee, meaning that if the system is not performing for the hours that it's down, you're not paying for the hours that the robot is down. Up to the point that it's fixed. Again, there is no payment for those hours, for those down hours. So, again, I wanted to kind of emphasize on the maintenance and monitoring of this system, right? A lot of us are talking about, Industry 4.0, but I don't think anybody has really taken advantage of it. And Industry 4.0 is near and dear to our heart. We installed, monitoring device on all the systems at no additional cost to our customers, just to make sure these systems are performing and your production is not missing a beat. So every system we deploy is coming with a software suite that monitors the system, and we also continue to maintain the system, whether it's preventative or reactive, all throughout the contract. So I mentioned in the beginning of the call, a lot of manufacturers have don't necessarily have a crystal ball on what they're going to be making 2 years, 3 years, 4 years down the road. So customers ask, what if there are change orders specifically? Now, different RaaS companies offer different solutions for this, but Formic, for example, there are 3 pillars that we utilize. Most importantly, we built usually the equipment, flexible equipment, and we usually size up the equipment so they could address a variety of different types of tasks. and oftentimes if you need a new pallet pattern, or you need the new tooling for your new product that you're manufacturing, we kind of include that in our contractual obligation to perform that periodically. In case that there is new significant costs associated with retooling and repurposing and reprogramming the robot, we offer our customers three options. There is a one-time fee for that specific tooling or programming need that you could pay us, or we could extend your contract by 1 month, 2 months, or 3 months to recoup that additional cost. Or we might increase your hourly rate ever so slightly by 5% to be able to recoup whatever cost associated with that new tooling design or new hardware that we have to install. So we normally work with our customers to make sure that the equipment that we're installing is flexible enough that could address a lot of different types of things that they would do. But things happen, we can't accommodate for everything. Therefore, we want to be able to provide this option to our end users, so they're able to repurpose the equipment if required. So, and just to summarize some of the topics that we talk and wrap and bring it all together, robots, the robots are unlimited. You could have as many robots as you need, so that really addresses all the open jobs that a lot of manufacturers that we deal have. The robots don't have any injuries or turnover. You could repurpose your existing workers to do more meaningful tasks. And I think to really be able to set yourself up for success, automation is definitely going to be there for forever. So you could focus on other areas of your business and not continue to worry about what labor challenges you have. And on the financial side, I mean, you will be saving obviously money on your operational costs by opting to Robotics-as-a-Service compared to paying this increasing labor cost, and avoid any performance risk of systems, because it comes with a contractual obligation for the RaaS provider to maintain and service the system for you, so you don't necessarily end up with boat anchors at your facility. So again, I encourage all of you to go and do a little bit of research on different RaaS solution providers. Again, this is a new concept. It's the term itself has been around for 5 to 10 years. There are a couple of different options of companies that offer robotics as a service. As far as I know there's nobody that offers the whole package similar to what Formic does, but I encourage everybody to go out there and research. The advantage that you could also have when you work with Formic, if you have worked with a machine builder or an integrator that has built you really good systems, you just want to continue to work with them, but you don't have the CapEx, or you don't have the need for that equipment indefinitely, I encourage you to have them kind of either reach out to us, because we work with a lot of different machine builders and integrators to be able to provide their solutions as a service. So, if you have somebody that you work really closely with and you like the equipment, the quality of the work they do, I encourage you to kind of have them work with us to be able to require that automation on your floor through a subscription or the hourly rate. We recently launched a white paper that kind of talks about different advantages of automation and RaaS. So there's a QR code here that I encourage everybody to scan and go in and check it out for themselves. But you could find us at formic.co. That's our website. And if you'd like to contact me directly, my email is misa@formic.co. And that is the last slide that I had. Thank you very much, and open for questions.
Well, Misa, first of all, thank you very much. That was excellent. Before we get into the questions, and by the way, there were a bunch, trying to group them here so we can get through as many as possible. Looks like we have at least a dozen after I do that. This white paper, I should have mentioned at the beginning, pick up your phone, scan that code. If you're a co-packer, it's a great information source. You'll get the deck as part of today's session, but I would strongly encourage you to get that white paper. I read it last night. So Misa, I'm going to go through these. I tried to put them in order. Some of them are very much about your offer, and some of them are about the larger industry, excuse me. So in no particular order, first one is about the robot as a service contracts. Probably use yours, you're the most familiar with those. What happens at the end of the contract? Are these capital leases, rentals, et cetera? Can you describe that?
Sure. So our contract lengths are anywhere from 1 year to 7 years. So depending on obviously the longer the customer is comfortable signing the contract, the lower the hourly rate becomes. At the end of the contract, either customers get to renew at a lower hourly rate because at that point, we have kind of amortized the cost of the equipment to a certain extent, or they could ask us to come in and take the equipment away. So those are the two options. They could either renew for a additional year, 2 years, 3 years, or they could have us come and take the equipment away if they don't have the need for it anymore.
So it's structured like a traditional lease in that regard, and that they have an option at the end?
Yeah, the options are either they can renew the contract or we will take the equipment away.
Got it. Understood. Thank you.
Exactly.
Got it. All right. The next one here. A lot of co-mans, they have their own in-house engineering. Others really depend heavily on systems integrators. Some are somewhere in between. Someone interested in this, are they better dealing with you or a RaaS provider directly, or should they be working through their systems integrator?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we have partnerships with about 100 machine builders and integrators across the country. So the chances are we have already spoken to maybe some of them, but not every single one. So what the process is, if it's someone that's already vetted by us, we understand their technology and the quality of the work, then that makes things really easy. If it's something that if somebody that's we never worked with, we would have an introductory call, look at the sample systems that they have, to just kind of verify the quality of the work, and we would work with them. So we don't necessarily have a certain number that we would only work with. As long as they pass our qualification criteria, we could work with the integrators. So if the customers have integrators or machine builders that they work with and they like us to use their system, they could go to them, they could provide us their spec of the machine that they're producing for them, or we could offer them one out of our portfolio of machine builders that we work with. So either of those options are acceptable.
Okay, thank you. Hey, in your example, you showed a palletizer. I forget the slide number, but the question was, you showed an hourly rate. Is that the rate that they would pay instead of the person? How does that work, and what is the comparison?
Yeah, I mean that is fairly accurate. For that type of palletizer. Again, the way that the hourly rates, the price we come up with is three factors. A, how complex the machine is, how much engineering goes into it, and what is the reutilization value of that asset. Meaning that if a customer doesn't need it after 1 year, where can we take that equipment, or is it reusable, right? So if in that scenario a palletizer is extremely reusable, the hourly rates are very attractive. The second factor is how many hours that the customers would use the system, meaning if they're running a 1-shift operation, 2-shift operation, or 3-shift operation. The longer they utilize the machine throughout the day, the better and the more attractive the hourly rate becomes. And finally is a term of the contract. Is it 18 months? Is it 2 years? Is it 3 years? So, we have machines that are running as low as, $4 or $5 an hour. We have machines that are running, as high as $70 and $80 an hour. So those are machines that are replacing multiple operators. So the range is going to be more often than not something that is comparable or much lower than the labor cost that they are paying today.
Got it. Thank you. And this is just my question. When labor rates are going up like they are right now, you see, what is it? Amazon, one of their unions is going after $30 an hour rates. Do you have automatic escalation clauses per year in here, or how does that work?
Yeah, it's a good question. So if you lock into a contract, a 3, 4, 5-year contract, the hourly rate stays the same. It doesn't change. If it's a shorter term contract and it comes up for renewal, there is a 4% escalator if you don't renew and opt in for a longer contract. So let's say you sign a 3-year contract, and then at the end of 3 years, it rolls over to another year, that comes with a 4% escalator. But when you lock in the price and you sign a multi-year contract, your hourly rate doesn't change and stays the same.
Got it. I'm just going to read this one. Scope changes, new projects, and early terminations and other variables are the world in co-man, meaning this is what they deal with all the time. How does your engagement model change when our situations unexpectedly change? Or how does it adjust to those?
Yeah, so it's really case by case, but I'd love to maybe talk about specific project and application. But normally what we tell our customers is to sign the term of a contract that they're comfortable with, and the hours that they that they're comfortable signing. Meaning that if you have a 2-year contract with your Kellogg or Tyson or whoever, sign a 1.5-year contract, and then if you're running a 2-shift, maybe sign up for 1 shift. So there's those minimums, are required payments from us. But if the needs change during the process, let's say somehow Tyson comes in and the volume kind of decreases, you would try to find another area that robot at your facility. And then if it requires new tooling and new programming, again, we'll give you those 3 options to pay us a one-time fee, or increase your hourly rate, or increase the contract term. So it really is dependent on the type of equipment. On palletizers, which we encourage most of our customers to get into first, we could offer a lot of flexibility. But if it's a custom case backer or custom case erector, those makes it slightly difficult for us to offer unlimited flexibility, because of the use for that machine might not be as high as on other customers that we have as something that's more standard. So I know that's not necessarily a straight answer, but typically I'd like to say it depends on the application, on the project, and the hardware. So I think it's a worthwhile discussion to have about it in a specific project, to see what are the options that we could offer as far as termination and things like that. In some cases, we have tied in our contract to a contract that our customers have with their end users, meaning that, hey, sign a 5-year contract with us, and we will offer you a really attractive price. But if your customer cancels that contract, and if we can't find another use for this piece of equipment on your floor, then we will terminate the contract with you and take the equipment away. So that's one option that we have offered to some of our customers.
Okay, well, that last sentence may have answered the next question, and that is, in the David Gray quote that you opened up with, he said, 5-year ROI. You handled the ROI thing right between the eyes, saying it starts day 1, which is a great answer. Yep. But it's still a 5-year commitment, and you're saying you have a solution for that as well, depending on the because the customer's project still is unlikely to be 5 years. It's by 2 or 3.
Exactly. So we understand that completely, right? I mean, there is nobody that's offering 5-year contracts. So what we try to do is really tie the machine to the contract that the customer has, and if that subsidy goes away and there is no other use for that machine at their customer floor, at our customer's floor, they would be willing to take the equipment back and use it elsewhere.
Got it. Here's another. Anyone that's been involved with WMS or warehouse automation projects know the level of commitment that the company makes to the brave new world can vary from sticking their toe in the water to jumping in. How much time and commitment does a company need to allocate to make RaaS work, rather than saying, oh, we tried it and it didn't work? I mean, if someone is looking at doing this, what level of commitment do they need to be looking at to give it a fair shot? I'm trying to paraphrase the question. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. I think there's an upfront time commitment to gather the details, right? So we need to know there's only certain information that the customers have access to that we don't, which is the product types that we have to run. So I would say, we could knock that out within 10, 15 hours max, a couple of different calls to confirm them. But as far as the term, I mean, I would say most of our customers that, have, purchased one system or get one system on their floor, within a couple of months, they see the performance and they opt in for a second or third system. So I would say, an upfront time commitment to identify the right area for the project and the application might be, and then providing us with all the details we need to be able to provide an accurate estimate for the hourly rate, is anywhere from 10 to 20 hours, I would say, time commitment. But they would be able to see the results immediately after the system is deployed. Once the system is on their floor, they'll be able to kind of see whether or not it's performing or not, and what is the level of service that Formic is providing. And like I said, most of our customers, after they see it for a couple of months, they will kind of move on and get their second or third system as well.
Here's a category specific one. Someone wants to know, are there robots available for vision systems such as labeling and defect detection?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I mean the those are some of the common things that, I mean, we even have small project that has a metal detector a part of the whole cell. So really, if there is a solution that has been developed by one of our vendors and our customers requiring that to be a part of the cell, we could provide inspection system, labeling system, defect rejection, and so on.
Got it. Okay. This one wants to know about end of life considerations. I assume they mean the system. It since it's as a service, I'm assuming it's an evergreen system, but maybe not. So, are there end of life considerations, and how long should the system be expected to last? Is the question.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think it again depends on the type of solution, but the life of automation equipment could be as little as 3-4 years, or it could be 15 years, depending on the components and the hardware that goes into it. But what's important during that contract that the customers have with us, if we find a better and an easier way to accomplish the task that they have, that's going to save time, money, energy, we're going to do that for our customers at no additional cost, right? So if we have an example of inspection system, if we install an inspection system that has a 1 second scan time, and then it's really important for the customer to have a half a second scan time, we might come back a year later as the technology gets better and replace that vision system, right? So we continue to kind of canvas the field for cool technologies that are being developed. And as we have a bigger customer base, we kind of try to understand what are the things that we could do to improve the system's performance and capabilities during the contract. And it's not something that the end users really have the time and the energy to do, but since this is all we do, we are constantly on the lookout for cool technologies and more more advanced things to deploy at our customers' facilities.
Got it. Okay. Real quick, this is probably a short one. Do you work with projects outside of the U.S.?
No, we are currently only operating in the United States, and if there is a billing entity in the United States, because we're set up on our back end like a financial institution, we can potentially deploy systems in Canada or Mexico, but that's really the range that we could provide. So US, Canada, and Mexico, only in Canada and Mexico if there's a billing entity in the United States.
Here's one on training, and we all grapple with this because well, I think everybody knows why. I don't need to explain it. So what are the training and skill requirements typically to operate a system once you've installed it? And then also, if, for example, we know these are the 3 or 4 different projects we want this for, can we build in the changeovers so we can go from project A to project B back to project A, or do we need to call you every time there's a change?
No, absolutely. So training is unlimited. Training and service and maintenance is unlimited at no additional cost, right? Because our incentive to keep these equipment running, so to make sure that we actually, utilizing the equipment that we put on your floor and get paid. But if those specifications are known ahead of time, we could build, the right tooling and the right program recipes, so you could do a simple changeover. A lot of our customers have, again, some turnover, especially in the second and third shift. So we might go in, once a month or once every 2 months to train the new people that they've hired. So it's our incentive to train as often as our customers need. So the first answer to your question is like, yeah, the training is unlimited as often as you guys need. We will come in and do that. Sometimes it might be remotely. If it's in person required, we'll do that as well. But as far as the changeovers go, like I mentioned, if it's something that is known ahead of time, the SKUs that customers are going to run, we're going to build that system flexible enough for the customers to do that on their own rather than calling us every time. But if they want us to do that, then again, that's part of our service. We bring it. We might not be as quickly as them because they're there, but we will do that, if they need us to.
Well, changeovers are the way of life, so I know you know that. Okay, I'm going to combine these last two. I think they're the last two. Do you have inventory drones is one question. The next one is, do you work with any forklifts that can load trucks? I'm reading those verbatim.
Yeah, so drones, no, we have not had any specific need from any of our customers for drones. Happy to evaluate it and see whether or not something that that we have something in our wheelhouse. Loading trucks, we have again we have looked at a couple of projects. We haven't deployed any, but depending on the pallets that we're trying to load and transport in the bay, it's feasible. I've seen it done. Again, something that we could definitely look at.
All right, we went through 15 questions here. This has been awesome. I think actually we're on actually right at end time. I will tell you that one of the things I looked at was the number of people that came and went, and almost no one has dropped off. We are almost at 100% peak. So that usually doesn't happen this late in the webinar, that late in the webinar. So clearly this was a captivating topic. Is there anything you'd like to add before we close, Misa?
No, again, I'd like to thank everybody's time. Thanks everybody for taking the time to join, especially CPA for organizing it. Again, we would love to help as many of the customers that attended as we can. But again, those are just the final words. But thanks again for everybody's time.
All right. Well, on behalf of the CPA and all of our members, I'd like to thank you for your time, and I'd like to thank everyone for attending today. As a reminder, you'll be getting a survey link in a minute. Please, please, please take a minute and do it. Please click that QR code, which is still on the screen, and get yourself a copy of that report. And thank you for your time today. Bye-bye.